Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to Tag Tuesday. I am doing a little tag called a little literary tag, which is a new tag created by a new channel, and the channel is called Book Time with Elvis, and the booktuber's name is Mark. He is wonderful. I've just recently discovered his channel, and he is really nice to listen to, a really smart guy. I definitely recommend you check out the video, which I'll link to, and subscribe to his channel, because he's great. I actually thought I was particularly interested in him in a weird way, because he is British, but he lives in the Czech Republic. And Mark, if you're watching, I will tell you and everyone else who's watching that my dad is from the Czech Republic. When he grew up there, it was Czechoslovakia, but he defected in 1980 when he was around 20 years old. He didn't know a word of English. He was dropped in the middle of New York City. And yeah, so I was sort of interested in Mark's channel for that, partly for that reason, also because obviously he talks about books really well, and he just seems like a really nice guy and everything. So anyway, so I'll link to his video, and I recommend his channel very highly. But I was actually tagged by two different booktubers. I was tagged by Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading, and the day before she tagged me, I was tagged by Mark Nash. So I will leave links to their videos as well, both of which were really fun to listen to. And yeah, this is a really interesting little tag, so I'll jump right in with the first question, which is, Tolkien once said that cellar door is the most beautiful expression in English. What do you think is the most beautiful word or phrase in English or any language? Well, I'm not big on like favorite words or anything like that. I certainly had a hard time thinking of any phrases or words to like pull out of my head to give for this tag, but one word that I have always loved, it's not an English word, but it's Gesamtkunstwerk, and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's obviously a long compounded German word, which means something like the total work of art. It was this idea that Richard Wagner was very interested in, this work of art that would, encompass all of the arts, visual, musical, dramatic, literary, and so on. And I've always loved that word, and I've always kind of loved the idea too, which is sort of fulfilled in opera and maybe also fulfilled in film, But anyway, so Gesamtkunstwerk I really like. And then an English word that I do rather like saying is adjudicate. Not necessarily because of what it means, just because I find it a weirdly amusing word to say, or weirdly satisfying word to say. I should put it that way, because the second prompt is what words in English do you find most amusing? And one word that I've always really liked is anti-disestablishmentarianism, just because of how long it is and how weirdly specific it is, because it was created for a very specific period in history, is my understanding. And yeah, and I just love saying it. So yeah, that's certainly a word I find amusing. Number 3 is, have you memorized any poems in full to whip out now and then to impress your friends? If so, which ones? I have memorized a few poems over the course of my life. I don't often recite them to people because most of the people I talk to wouldn't be that interested, and I also feel like if I were to just start reciting a poem to people, it would come off as really kind of pretentious and pompous. So I don't tend to whip them out and show off my, knowledge. And also, like, I haven't memorized that many. So there are a handful that I've had memorized throughout my life. I'm not sure how many of these I have memorized now, but there was a Ode to Joy by Miroslav Holub, which I think I do still have memorized. One Art by Elizabeth Bishop, which is awfully kind of easy to remember because it's a villanelle, so there's a lot of repetition. But yeah, that's definitely one of my, these are all favorite poems of mine, for sure. The third one is Because I Could Not Stop for Death by Emily Dickinson. I did recite that one once while my mom and I were hiking. We were both on a long hike, and we were both bored, so it's just like all of a sudden an Emily Dickinson poem. And obviously it didn't amuse us for too long because it's a short poem, but that's one. Daddy by Sylvia Plath, and also Lady Lazarus by Sylvia Plath, which I memorized mostly by listening to them. There are some really great recordings of Sylvia Plath reading her own poems on YouTube, and I listened to her reading those two poems just absolutely incessantly because I love them so much. And yeah, I don't think I have them both memorized in full anymore, but I have large chunks of both of them memorized, and I do obviously still love them both. I also used to have the opening 12 or so lines of the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer memorized. I love that Middle English so much. I have only read the Canterbury Tales once. It's, a challenging read, reading it in Middle English, but that opening I absolutely love, and I just love the sound of the Middle English. And then I also had the first, 10 or so lines of the to be or not to be soliloquy from Hamlet memorized. Speaking of Shakespeare, I also had the tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow soliloquy from Macbeth memorized. I think I still have that one memorized, but the to be or not to be one I had part of memorized. And there's a funny story about the Hamlet one, because the time when I had it memorized was around Halloween, and I went to a Halloween party. This was when I was in my master's program, so I was in a Halloween party with some other grad students, and I went dressed as Hamlet. I wore a black robe, and I had a dagger with me, and I brought a skull called Yorick, of course. But for the occasion, I memorized this part of to be or not to be. And somewhere in the world there is a video. I'm not sure who has it or whether it's posted somewhere, but somewhere in the world is a very short video of me reciting the first 10 lines of the to be or not to be soliloquy while I'm just absolutely pissed. So yeah, anyway, so that's just a funny little anecdote having to do with that one. But anyway, I spent a lot of time on that one. Number 4, who or what do you consider to be an underrated and underappreciated author or book? I'm going to go with a Czech author, which, again, seems... I actually thought of my answer to this question without thinking about the fact that Mark lives in the Czech Republic, but I picked a Czech author, and this is Bohumil Hrabal, and I'm going to pick specifically his book, Closely Watched Trains, which is a novella, almost a short story, but it is published as a novella most of the time. It is really, really good. It's a World War II kind of drama about a 22-year-old young man who really kind of angsts a lot over his sexuality and his quote-unquote manhood. And it was also made into a really great film directed by Eugene Menzel. And they're both great. And I think what I love about the story so much is that it explores toxic masculinity in really interesting ways, and it's a really, really good book, and not one that I hear many people talk about when Eastern European literature comes up, so I'll go with that one. Number 5 is, which book do you consider to have the best or most memorable beginning? Well, there are quite a few openings that I like, but 3 that I love in particular. One would be Moby Dick. Not just that first line, call me Ishmael, but that whole first paragraph of Moby Dick is just I think, just marvelous. But then there's Mrs. Dalloway. I've always loved that first line. Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself. But then the Divine Comedy as well. I can't remember. I'm gonna paraphrase it, but it's something like, midway on the course of my life, I found myself in a dark wood. And I have come to love that, and The Divine Comedy is one of my favorite books, for sure. And part of the reason that I love that opening is because it's used in one of my favorite movies of all time, in Andrei Tarkovsky's Mirror. That is my second favorite movie of all time, and there is a scene where a character is walking through a really dark corridor and sort of does this little hop and clicks her feet together, and recites that line, so that's part of the reason that I love that line. So part of it is non-literary, but I think my favorite opening now, the opening that I love the most, is not a book per se, but it's a play, and it's the first line of Hamlet, which is, "Who's there?" And I love that line. I'm not sure why, but I just think it's such a startling opening, you know what I mean, to a rather startling play, probably. So number 6, which book title best describes your life? I've actually been asked this question, something like this question before, and I think my answer from then still holds up. I'm gonna go with Jim Holt's classic, Why Does the World Exist? Because of course. Number 7, what was the last book you read that led to a moistening of the eyes? I don't tear up that often at books, but one that comes to mind is one that I read more than a year ago. It's An Unquiet Mind, a memoir by Kay Redfield Jamison, which is a memoir of her living with bipolar disorder, and there's just one scene she describes of her just lying in her bed with her husband, and her husband is reading to her, and it's it made me teary-eyed. Number 8, when it is time to shuffle off this mortal coil and go to that big library in the sky, what bookish or literary quote would you like engraved on your headstone? Well, I'm not planning to have a headstone. I'm planning to be cremated and have my ashes spread, if possible, in the yard of the house where I grew up. If that house is still in my family, then I would want some of my ashes spread there. If it's not, if my family doesn't own that house anymore, then obviously that would be kind of weird. But part of them there, but then most of them at the yard around the cabin that my family owns in the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York. We went there every summer, and I have a lot of fond memories going there and just relaxing in the mountains there. And so I would have my ashes spread around. So I wouldn't have a headstone, but I think that a quote that I would, if I metaphorically, hypothetically had a headstone, a quote that I would maybe want on it is suitably uplifting. It's from Hart Crane's poem, The Broken Tower, and the quote is, "And so it was I entered the broken world, to trace the visionary company of love, its voice an instant in the wind, I know not whither hurled, but not for long to hold each desperate choice." Sorry, I bumbled the reading, but yeah, I know. Again, suitably uplifting, but I love that quote, and I think it's suitable for a headstone. Number 9, if you wrote a book and didn't want to use your own name, what name would you choose as a suitable pen name? I've always thought that if I were in this position, I would write under the name Carl Carpenter. Carl is my middle name. It's spelled a bit peculiarly in the eyes of an English speaker because it's the Czech version of Carl, which is actually the Czech version of Charles, which is for my maternal grandfather. But yeah, so Carl Carpenter, and then Carpenter is my mom's maiden name, which is also the last name of my maternal grandfather, from whom I get the name Carl. So Carl Carpenter. And then number 10, many literary characters have sidekicks or henchmen. Who would you choose to be your companion on your life adventure? Well, I'll go get her in a second. It would be Bessie, who is clearly incredibly happy that I'm doing this to her right now. But yes, it would be my cat. And lest you worry about her being a cat and not liking traveling, I will say that she is one of the few cats in the world who has no problem with being put in a crate and getting in a car. So, if we were driving, hopefully we would either drive or fly. I sure hope we wouldn't be on any boats. I do not like the ocean, but which is ironic since one of my favorite books is Moby Dick. But anyway, we're not going to think about it. But anyway, so that's the tag. Thank you, Kelly and Mark, for tagging me, and thank you for creating the tag, the other Mark. And I am going to tag 2 people. I am going to tag Weston Ritchie. I recently tagged Weston in something else, so I feel a little bad double tagging them, but I didn't really get the chance to sort of shout out Weston. I'm trying to do this thing where when I do tags, I'll tag someone who is a little bit of a smaller booktuber and try to give them a shout out along with tagging them. And so I want to give Weston a little bit of a shout out, recommend you go subscribe to their channel. They're a really smart booktuber. They read a lot of literary fiction and poetry, but also classics and so on. But they just talk about their ideas extremely articulately and read some extremely interesting stuff. So I recommend Weston's channel, and also Weston, I tag you, but obviously no pressure. And then the second person I am going to tag is Beating Around the Books, who is another new-ish booktuber. Yeah, she is also just marvelous. Just, yeah, a booktuber who just casually sits and talks about what she's reading, like we like here on BookTube 2.0, and she is wonderful, and just, you feel like you're sort of just sitting there in the room, having a glass of water with her or something while you listen to her talk. So, yeah, she's a great channel as well. So, anyway, so that is the little literary tag. I will end this now, because I think this has been longer than I meant it to be, but I will let you all go. Anyway, bye guys.